In you, O Lord, have I taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me and set me free. Incline your ear to me and save me. Be my strong rock, a castle to keep me safe. For you are my crag and my stronghold. That in the storms of life, in the blowing winds, in the pouring rain, in our circumstances, good, bad, and indifferent, we have a refuge in the house of the Lord. In his righteousness, he not only frees us, but he saves us. He hears our prayers and our needs, and he is a strong rock upon which we can stand. He is a castle built to withstand the forces of armies. And in him we can find safety. He is a stronghold where we can be protected. He is like a rocky crag, like an outcropping in a mountain that we can hide and shelter under, that we can grab as the winds blow and not be blown away. That our circumstances will not always be good, nor will they always be bad. They will occasionally be indifferent. But in each of these, when life is filled with joy and happiness, and when life is filled with sorrow and pain, when things are easy and light, and when we suffer, or we watch those whom we love suffer, and there's nothing we can do about it. That Christ our Lord is a rock. He is strong. And he will neither be shaken nor moved. And Christ our Lord is a castle built to withstand the conquering armies. Standing in strength generation after generation for hundreds and thousands of years and for time memorial to come. He is a stronghold. When he holds us, we are secure, though buffeted by the winds and the rain, and like a crag, like the rocky outcropping, we can find in him shelter, safety, strength, hope. For the young, for the old, for those yet to be born, and those taking their final breaths. For you are our hope, O Lord God, our confidence since we have been young, and our shelter for each day until our last. Both of these readings that we start off with, that from Jeremiah where the Lord reveals his call to him, I have known you before you were born, from your very conception. Who is it that's molded you within the womb of your mother, who has breathed in you the spirit of life, who has called you for a purpose and a reason? It is our Lord God, who has made us, who delivers us, who rescues us, who sustains us. He is the same Lord, right there on that second page, first page, second page, who is our crag, our stronghold, our strong rock, and our castle. And then you get this fold right in the middle of the paper, and we get two different readings. And strangely enough, those two readings kind of go with each other. We have readings of both the frightening power of God, but also renewal and redemption, where Mount Sinai is transformed into Mount Zion, where the earthly commandments are transformed into his heavenly redemption. And we see that played out in a very practical sense as Jesus heals a woman on the Sabbath. So, today is not the Sabbath. Did you know that? It's not the Sabbath. Now, throughout Christian history, this day, Sunday, has been used for Sabbath worship and Sabbath rest, occasionally referred to as the Sabbath, but it's been more of a general sense than it is in a technical sense. In a technical sense, the Sabbath is already done with this week. It was yesterday, Saturday. Sabbath meaning seventh, the seventh day of the week. That Saturday is the end of the week. Sunday is the beginning of the week. Regardless of what our school or work schedules say, you look on a calendar and it's actually going to tell you the truth, that our day begins on Sunday. Sunday is not the Sabbath, it is the Lord's day. But let me explain that by explaining our gospel passage. Because we're not Sabbatarians, we're not Seventh-day Adventists, we're not preserving a Saturday worship because the Ten Commandments have said so. And part of the reason why is implicit in what happens in this very passage. So, let's look at it one more time. Jesus has gone to the synagogue because the Sabbath is the right day to go to the synagogue. And he's there for worship. And there is a woman, and she is bent, and she is stooped, and she is twisted, and she is gnarled, and Jesus heals her. 18 years she's been all hunched and gnarled and stooped. And Jesus lifts her, straightens her, strengthens her. She's refreshed, and she's renewed. And it's like a brand new life, and it's like this terrible burden lifted off of her, and she is made whole, and she is made healed, and she is strong, and Jesus gets in trouble. The rulers of the synagogue say, no, no, no. You know that the Sabbath is not a day of work. It is a day of rest. You did work. You healed her, and that's wrong, and that's bad. And you shouldn't have done it because you got 6 days to work, you get 1 day to rest. Don't do that. And then Jesus needs to remind them of the true purpose of the Sabbath. This will not be the only time that Jesus heals on the Sabbath. There's this version, and then there's another very famous one where he heals a man with a withered hand. It also happens on the Sabbath. Same sort of thing happens. Jesus is accused of doing wrong and doing bad, and he has to remind the people what the Sabbath is really for. So let me remind you as well. The rule of honoring the Sabbath comes from the Ten Commandments. God writes these laws, these divine commands with his own finger on the stone, gives them to Moses there on Mount Sinai. He brings it to his people to bind them together, to bind them to him, and that's one of the first ones. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, first time it's a command to keep that Sabbath holy, but it's not the first time that Sabbath rest has shown up. Even before they received the commandments, the Israelites who were set free from bondage in Egypt, and they were wandering in the desert, and God is leading them. It's 40 days, and they all starved to death because there's no food. You are really supposed to agree. It's okay. It doesn't happen that way. He provides for them supernaturally. Every day there's manna that appears on the ground, quail and all this other sort of stuff. But the manna does not appear on the Sabbath. On Saturday, there ain't no manna, and they all starve and die because there's no food on Saturday. No! Because Friday, there's a double portion. That way, they do not have to work. They do not have to gather, because on Friday, they're given what they will need for that day and for the next. Therefore, they may eat and live, and they may rest. Now, this command, which is present through God supernaturally providing what the people of Israel need so they can rest on the Sabbath, and then written literally in stone as a command that they ought to rest, is connected to something that happens even before that, right? Where a seventh day of rest comes. Very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1. In the beginning, God creates the heavens and the earth. And he makes all that there is, seen and unseen. And he makes the light and the sun and the moon and the stars, and there's firmaments, and there's plants and animals, and all that kind of stuff. And then 6 days God creates, and on the seventh day God rests because he's so worn out. I mean, separating firmaments, that's heavy work. He's beat, and he needs to rest, right? No. that's not what happens. And honestly, if a preacher starts telling you the wrong thing, just don't let him get away with it. Don't let me get away with it. That is not right. God is not exhausted from creating. He rests not because he's tired. Why does he rest? Well, it's connected to the reason why he gives us the gift of the Sabbath. He is then in fellowship and communion with that which he has made. On the seventh day, God rests, not because he's worn out. He rests to enjoy the creation. And so that is his command to us as well. We rest, not because he got tired, but because he understands our natures, for he made them. And our nature is to keep on pressing, is to keep on working, is to go a little further, is to do a little more. But consider this in a very practical sense. 7 days a week and you're working hard. Got to earn a living, got to provide for the kids, got to pay the bills or the roof over their heads or all these other sorts of things. Or I've just got to do what I need to do, and it's they're 8 hours a day or 10 or 12 or 16, and you're working so hard for other people, or you're working so hard so you can get to the top, or you're working so hard so you can take care of what needs to be taken care of. And if you keep on doing that, when do you enjoy that which you were working so hard for? Oh, I did it for the kids so they could have what they need and they can be fed and clothed and blah, blah, blah. Of course, they're all gone now, and I miss them growing up, and the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon and all that kind of stuff, but I work. And on a very practical level, we understand this. That you can be so caught up and consumed in the busyness of life that you rarely stop and enjoy the purpose for which you were busy in the first place. Do you work to support other people, but you never have the time or the energy to be around them? Do you work to keep a roof over your head, but you're never there? Do you work to achieve something within your job or career, but never have the opportunity to enjoy what you have been given or where you happen to be through that job or through that career? And God says, so you're going to stop. I'm going to make you. You won't make yourself, so I will make you. And you stop. Yeah, stop and smell the roses, but also stop for a moment within all the busyness and not lose sight of why you have been busy. And this is not just for career people. This could be in retirement. This could be through a hobby. This could be through leisure activities. But you start just getting so busy. You start just doing stuff. And sometimes you forget why you did it in the first place. The joy that happens when you garden, but when you're always chasing leaves, you're always pulling weeds, you're always thinking about, oh, and it's going to be a hot day today, and what about that? You never have the chance to be in the midst of the garden and enjoy the beauty for which God has granted you and you have worked to develop and maintain. And that's, in essence, what the Sabbath is for. And maybe even more fundamentally, by stopping and pausing on the Sabbath, by interrupting our work and our efforts and our busyness, we acknowledge that we are not fed by our own hands. We are not granted life by our own force of will. We are not sustained day by day, woken up new each morning because we worked so hard at it, but by the grace and gift of God. Not a single one of us can make ourselves live another day. Though we might work, we ought to. We might strive and achieve, seek to provide. These are still gifts that come from the giver of all good things, from the Father of lights. And by stopping for that day, we acknowledge it's not all on me. It feels that way sometimes. But ultimately, fundamentally, eternally, what we have is granted as a gift from God Himself. And so when I stop it and I pause, it reminds me in a very visceral, in a literal sense, It is not my efforts that keep me alive, that keep my family fed, that keep this world turning. But it is a gift from Almighty God. So I stop and I acknowledge that. And I give thanks. So Sabbath is for worship. Sabbath is for thankfulness and gratitude. You stop your work so that you can enjoy what you've been given. And you enjoy what you've been given so that you may be properly grateful and thankful for He who has given it to you. Make sense so far? Now, in trying to parse that out as a practical sense of rules, for these are commandments, therefore obligations, things got a little messy. Now, in Scripture, there are some specific rules that are laid out about what does and does not constitute work on the Sabbath, because obviously somebody's going to say, but does that work? But does that work? And how about if I do this, but don't do that? And so there are some general and practical rules in there, but frankly, there's fewer of them than you might think. A lot of these very, very specific and detailed rules come out through what we might refer to as the rabbinical teaching or the midrash. This is where the teachers of the law or the rabbis, they're trying to explain what it means in a practical sense. You know, it's not all that different than what I try to do. I'm trying to take the truths of Scripture and explain them so you understand them and you can apply them. But in doing that, sometimes you get into these little rabbit holes of details. And this is what Jesus confronts. He heals a woman. It's on the Sabbath. Should he have not done that because that's the day you're supposed to rest? He says, you have forgotten the purpose of the Sabbath. He doesn't say in this passage, but he will say it in the next, where man was not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man. The Sabbath is our master that we were created to follow and obey, like some sort of burden or onerous weight placed on top of us. The Sabbath is a gift. And it was granted to us so that we could actually enjoy what we've been given, and we may give proper thanks to the Lord who has given it to us. He showed us the example in His day of rest and creation to be in fellowship and communion with that which He had made, and now He gives that gift to us to say, you need this time. You ought to have this time. And if you desire to be in proper fellowship with me and with each other, you must take this time. It renews you, it refreshes you, it strengthens you. This is the recreation of the world through recreation, fellowship, and gratitude, and praise. Take off the burden of work, if only for a day or for a moment, so you might be properly thankful and enjoy what you have been given. Is that not what happens here? 18 years this woman is bent and hunched. There's no break for her. Every single day of the week, she is struggling. She is in pain. She is stooped over. And some of you know what that's like, for your body to fight against you, for your body to not give you a break. That there's a weakness or there's a pain, and it just doesn't quit no matter what you do. And it's day after day, and it's month after month, and it's year after year, and it is work for this woman just to live with her body all twisted and gnarled. And on this Sabbath day of rest, Jesus gives her rest. He takes the work from her. He removes the burden from her. And she is renewed and she is refreshed. She might enjoy then the blessings which she has been granted and be in fellowship and communion with the Lord, with each other. She might be made strong in life. Is that not the purpose of Sabbath? Well, Jesus will say there is something greater than the Sabbath at play. I am the Lord of the Sabbath. He who is the Lord of the Sabbath, He sets the rules. You want to properly understand what is and isn't work, consult the Lord of the Sabbath. And He says, setting my children free. giving them health, giving them life, giving them strength, removing those burdens so that they can live. That is Sabbath work. It gives us rest and it glorifies God. The man with the withered hand, who had to work twice as hard to compensate with his good hand, you would have to imagine, who probably carried with him the burdens of everyone else, being able to see it and being able to know it, and assuming that there's some defect, there's some curse, there's some burden on this man, and then there on the Sabbath, and he is made whole. The burdens removed, the weights taken away, the strength restored. Jesus, who is the Lord of the Sabbath, said, this is the purpose of the Sabbath, to make you healthy and holy and make you grateful and strong. You are renewed and you are refreshed. All right, so why didn't we do this yesterday? As we saw in that reading from Hebrews, those kind of two parallel occasions, those two juxtaposed settings, Mount Sinai and Mount Zion, the Ten Commandments and the new creation, the Old Testament and the promise of grace through the gospel. And this is where we see it come together. For that Lord of the Sabbath will rest on the Sabbath himself. Christ, who is the Lord of the Sabbath, will die on which day? On a Friday. And take a 24-hour period where his body, which has been at work, is at rest for our sake and for the sake of the world. Beautiful prayer in the Station of the Cross as we approach that last station, where his body is laid in a tomb in a garden, and he rests on the Sabbath day. And then, at the start of a new week, there is a new creation. For through the resurrection of Christ, who is the Lord of the Sabbath, the world turned upside down, our sin turned upside down, our lives turned upside down. The Lord's day transforms the beginning of the week to say that old creation has come to a close, and with this new week, the new creation through the resurrection of Christ has now begun and will never end. So from the beginning, the Christians of the new church have said, man, Sunday is the day. I mean, everything has changed because of this. Everything is different because of the resurrection. This day, like us, has been marked forever. So this is the day we will come together to worship and we will come together to praise. And as we do so, we will be at rest. So when are you more at rest in body and mind and in spirit than when you are truly grateful and when you are thanking God? For it is the resurrection of the Lord of the Sabbath has now turned everything upside down, and so that moment is now shifted from the end of the week and its conclusion to the beginning of the week and a new creation. So we worship here on the Lord's Day, on Sunday, the beginning of the week, the beginning of the new creation, the celebration of the resurrection, and we can be at rest, for our burdens are set free through the cross. For through his sacrifice and his sacraments, we might be re-strengthened. We might be refreshed. We might be renewed. Mount Sinai has now pointed us to Mount Zion, and the law has now prepared us for his grace and for his redemption. And we, like all of creation, might be made new. So that's what the verse is for. The church, man. Worship. Give thanks. Be grateful. Be in fellowship with one another, in fellowship with God. That's what it's for. Rest this day. Take in what he's granted you, what he's blessed you with. It's not just by your force of will. It's not just by the sweat of your brow. It's not just by the work of your hands. Everything we have has been granted first by the gracious love of God. And if we don't stop, and if we don't think, and if we don't thank, we will lose sight and we will lose the blessings that He intends and the ones that He has offered. For it is the Lord's day and the start of our week, which is the start of His new creation. Be refreshed, be re-strengthened, and be renewed. For this is His day, and it is His gift to you.